Hello, I'm Terry DeMonte. This is number 0852, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0852. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, you'll meet Mark Graves, who is the director of AI and Faith, which is a meeting of the minds between artificial intelligence and religion.
AI is going to become increasingly better at acting in ways that remind us of humans. And humans tend to project onto, systems. We name our cars, we talk to our plants. And so when we've got an AI system that is conversing with us in the same way that a person will, we're very easily going to get kind of sucked into that.
Valentina Ganeva, director of the documentary film Schindler Space Architect, that explores the life and legacy of visionary modernist architect Rudolf M. Schindler, whose innovative designs helped shape the Southern California lifestyle. One of the narrators of the film is Oscar-winning actress Meryl Streep. How did she get Meryl on board?
It's already a big thing that she agrees to narrate it, but that she's delighted was really, I was surprised how she knew about Schindler. And then it turns out that she had been exposed to his architecture through a couple of her friends that lived in Schindler houses. One is Susan Orlean, the writer of the book The Orchid Thief, and that book became a film adaptation, and Meryl played Susan in the film. So they were friends. Meryl has been to her house.
Kristina Rienzi, author of the thriller Winter Road.
I feel like it's the kind of story that everyone can relate to on one level or another. It's fast-paced. There's an element of you follow movies and you're a movie buff, that monster in the house theme, right? You're trapped and there's somebody there who's after you, kind of a cat and mouse fight for survival. And that's the exciting part. But I think the relatable part is really home for the holidays, something goes awry. I mean, our worst fear for me would be home with my family on Christmas Eve and something terrible happens. I mean, you can't imagine that, right? But something terrible you invited in.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, dad joke theater, morning shower thoughts, and of course, an idiot of the day. The guest later, the person who told you this was show number 0852, was Terry DeMonte, legendary broadcaster who for many years was the morning man on Shome FM. He's now the co-host of Standing By, the Terry and Ted podcast, which he hosts with his partner in crime, Ted Bird. Thank you very much, Terry, for doing this week's slate on the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. "36-year-old Calvin Johnson faces theft auto charges after crashing a stolen 2018 BMW convertible while driving over 100 miles an hour in Florida. Johnson allegedly took the vehicle from Ormond Beach's Centennial Park after finding keys in the cup holder while the owner walked his dog. Following the single vehicle accident, passing drivers pulled Johnson from the totaled car. When police arrived, Johnson denied stealing the BMW, telling officers he was teleported into the vehicle. He referenced the X-Men and told cops, "You saved me from the aliens."
Scotty, beam me up.
Johnson was hospitalized under guard before transfer to county jail. Johnson has multiple 2024 convictions, including trespass, obstruction, loitering, resisting, and grand theft for stealing a $1,500 bicycle. When asked why he stole that bike, Johnson answered, "I just felt like it." What? The aliens didn't make him steal the bike? 23-year-old UC Berkeley student Zoe Rosenberg received a 90-day jail sentence for taking 4 chickens from a Petaluma slaughterhouse in 2023. The animal activist was convicted recently of felony conspiracy and 3 misdemeanors for the coordination action at the Purdue-owned Petaluma poultry facility. A jury found Rosenberg conspired with Direct Action Everywhere members to enter the plant illegally, remove live chickens, and steal business records. Rosenberg defended her actions, stating, "I will not apologize for taking sick, neglected animals to get medical care." She named the chickens Poppy, Ivy, Aster, and Azalea. The sentence allows 60 days to be served through alternatives like electronic home confinement. That means she still will have to spend 30 days in jail. While there, do you think they'll feed her chicken? You know it's finger-licking good.
Kentucky Fried Chicken, the real old-fashioned treat.
Speaking of prison food, authorities seized a drone on the morning of December the 7th after it dropped an unusual contraband package into Lee Correctional Institution's yard in Bishopville. The South Carolina Department of Corrections discovered raw steak, crab legs, Old Bay seasoning, marijuana, and cigarettes intended for inmates. Said officials on social media, "Seems some folks were planning an early holiday Old Bay crab boil and steak dinner along with their marijuana and cigarettes." They posted it with the hashtag #ContrabandChristmas. Prison spokeswoman Christy Shane said, "I'm guessing the inmates who were expecting the package are crabby." No arrests have been made as investigations continue. Flying drones near South Carolina prisons carries up to 30 days in jail, while dropping contraband is a felony punishable by 10 years imprisonment. Has anybody with the authorities in South Carolina checked with either Uber Eats or DoorDash?
Your door to unlimited power. DoorDash.
And let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff All program, shall we? Churches are having a digital awakening as pastors embrace artificial intelligence to help them create sermons and interact with their congregations. But while they may embrace the assistance and the ability to be more current, moral and ethical challenges are being raised, just like in every area grappling with the new technology. AI and Faith is a nonprofit focused on engaging religions with AI. Mark Graves is a research fellow and director at AI and Faith and a research associate professor of psychology at Fuller Theological Seminary. He joins us from California via riverside.com. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Peter. How are you doing? Thanks for having me here.
Yes, great. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us. The idea of using AI and faith together, when did this come about as far as you were concerned?
Well, for me, it was actually pretty early. The way I actually learned about AI was from a relative that was doing some work, very early work in Bible translation. So they had always been connected for me, and that was back in the 70s, I guess. It got me interested in AI, and then I went to study AI. And I didn't make the connection again until probably about 10 years ago.
So what was it that made the connection for you 10 years ago?
So it was recognizing that AI was becoming much more of having a greater impact on society, and the technology was actually being much more sophisticated. So, I had studied AI in graduate school, but had then left to work in other areas. But then I could just tell it was starting to build back up. And in the meantime, I had actually studied theology and ethics and realized that I had some skills at the intersection that we're kind of unique.
So, how do theologians view AI? I mean, you were forward thinking, but what about others within the brethren?
There's a range. Certainly, some people see the what AI can bring in helping to help people out, resolve issues. Others are a little bit more resistant to that, have more concerns about the direction it can go. A lot of the disagreements or concerns about AI are probably more within education and people that are teaching because of the impact AI is having on that than religious views per se.
How do you think that religious leaders can help in the development and the use of AI technology just generally?
AI is raising a lot of issues about what it means to be a person. It's raising deep ethical concerns. It's really challenging a lot of the ways that we thought of ourselves as being unique. And religious leaders are in well positioned to help us as society wrestle with that. Some of these questions have been going on for a couple of millennia at least, and are infused within society. And so our religious leaders can help us understand where the roots of some of these questions are coming from, and also help us situate AI as something that does threaten some conceptions of what it means to be a human person, but can also extend what we're able to do as people trying to bring about good in the world.
What is the biggest ethical question when it comes to AI and faith?
I think it's around spirituality and like how does AI fit within this kind of more spiritual, not even necessarily religious realm, but it touches on to like mental health, caregiving, including like end of life caregiving, how people raise their kids. We've got most people have a sense of something as more than just day-to-day existence, whether they think of that spiritually, religiously, just in terms of the meaning that they want to bring into life. And it's in that gap that AI is, in a sense, the first technology that's really infiltrated that space. And I think that's been a space that was often the purview of religious leaders. But that means that there's also kind of the ethical issues of like, is it okay for AI to help people with mental health issues, to provide spiritual direction, to provide pastoral care, to write sermons, to answer questions people have about kind of the deeper meaning and issues of life.
Let's go back in time. Let's go back to the origin of the Bible. I mean, whether one believes or not, you have to understand that the Bible itself is one's translation or interpretation of what the Word of God is, correct?
Yeah.
So from that perspective, is AI any different from what the original authors of the Bible were?
In what sense?
In the sense that it's an interpretation of the Word of God.
So I think interpretation is a good phrase to use there. That, I mean, the people that were writing, the Bible, they were interpreting, what they saw God within their lives, within the lives of others, within the life of Christ for the Gospels. And AI is the current large language models that are underneath the generative AI, they are interpreting our use of language, what they learn about human culture. And so there is a way in which there is, if you want to say a translation, from, kind of the life of faith, in religion into the written word, and here from our written language into this mathematical and statistical space in which the generative AI operates.
Okay, so let's look at it from your own perspective. You are someone who's heavily involved in AI, and you are a person of faith. So from that perspective, What have you learned from AI? Because the reason why I ask that question is it's one thing for us to interpret whatever the Bible says, but it's another thing for AI to do it literally at a split second. So, does it give you some insights into your own faith when you use AI?
Yeah, it does. It a good analogy might be, if you're having a conversation with, a young child who's kind of questioning about their faith, the kind of the simplicity of the questions that they may ask, and some of the things that they say can sometimes feel very profound. So I think similarly with AI, even some of the questions it may ask, some of the things that it says, even if it doesn't really fully appreciate the meaning behind them, can still be phrased in ways that can really contribute to my understanding, other people's understanding, that perspective, because it's very good at summarizing and synthesizing different perspectives and points of view into some kind of common thread.
As someone who is into AI and into religion, do you find that there are any pitfalls that might be along the road as far as you're concerned with AI?
Yeah, and a big one goes into questions about kind of mental health. AI is going to be very good, become increasingly better at acting in ways that remind us of humans. And humans tend to project onto systems. We name our cars, we talk to our plants. And so when we've got an AI system that is conversing with us in the same way that a person would, we're very easily going to get kind of sucked into that. And even though there is a lot of things that AI can do, kind of guiding people through their life journey is not something that it's good at now or is likely to be good at in the near future.
Are there things that you don't think AI should do when it comes to religion?
One of the things that I'm hearing people talk about is kind of the use in like sermon writing, especially if it's not announced. I think as people are to expect there to be kind of a wisdom or some insight when asking for spiritual guidance and things like that, I think it's important to not put AI in there in a let's say a deceptive way. I mean, certainly it's one thing to be experimenting with it, but we shouldn't use AI as a replacement for people's own spiritual sense of what might be needed in the moment.
It just so happens that when I was booking you to be on this particular show, I also came across another site which is called Dial a Prophet. And it is a text with Jesus AI powered chatbot smartphone app trained on biblical concepts. Is this something that you would be interested in, or do you find it problematic?
I find it problematic. I think some of the tools like that can be well done and can answer questions that people may have about, for example, Christianity, the Bible, that they either don't have access to or might even be embarrassed to ask. And I think there's definitely a place that AI can play in that kind of religious education. But whenever the bots in a sense, act as if, I am Jesus or, I am Isaiah and let's have a conversation, then I find that problematic. I think when people see, for example, a passion play or something like that, even if you're immersed in it, there's that distance. Whereas with AI technology, as it tries to emulate more and more the way people act, I think people would get sucked into that a little bit more than we would realize or be prepared for. And I think that can do some real harm.
As I said in the introduction, you are the director at AI and Faith. Is there any way that some people can get into a conversation, or is there a website for your particular group that people can engage in?
Yes, so it's AI and Faith, .org, with the word "and" in there. And we have a newsletter that comes out every month. We've got a podcast series there also, and additional written content, articles, book reviews, etc. On our website.
Mark, thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Again, thanks for having me.
Mark Graves, a research fellow and director at AI and Faith, and a research associate professor of psychology at Fuller Theological Seminary. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0852, and you'll find the link to the website of AI and Faith, which is aiandfaith.org, where you can find out more information. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
And now, Dad Joke Theater.
It's bad to iron a four-leaf clover. You should never press your luck.
Join us again for another Stuff File program, Dad Joke Theater.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like, but the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestufffileprogram. program.
I'm standing with my reindeer. For Canada! Ho, ho, ho! Yes, it's me, Santa Claus. I travel everywhere, but I choose to live in the Canadian part of the North Pole. Canada's a most precious place. So, buy Canadian. Shop as if your country depends on it. Keep your money in Canada. For Canada. Ho, 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 ho.
Yo, Mishak here. You're listening to my uncle, Peter Anthony Holder. It's fascinating radio for everybody from 8 to 80. Even if you're really old, like my grandmother, Peter's sister, who I understand is older than bacteria. Take it away, Peter.
And still to come on the program, we'll talk to the director of the documentary Schindler Space Architect. We'll also talk to the author of Winter Road. Plus, we do indeed have a morning shower thought, an idiot of the day, and much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. 52-year-old Georgia inmate Timothy Shane escaped from Grady Hospital in Atlanta early on December the 1st during a medical examination following a suicide attempt. Shane fled on foot at 1:20 a.m., then stole an SUV containing a Glock handgun before crashing the vehicle and continuing his escape. Authorities discovered Shane ordered an Uber to pick him up at a South Rockdale residence, but deputies arrived to find him gone. Shane later stole a Pontiac Grand Prix, which was recovered at a Henry County Publix supermarket on Highway 155. He was later caught in Covington after witnesses spotted him knocking on doors. Rockdale County Sheriff Eric Levitt said, "Inmate Shane has a history of fleeing along with felony drug and weapons charges." So, if he had a history of fleeing, why wasn't there more precautions to prevent that when he was taken to the hospital? And also, he got into an Uber and later another ride-hailing vehicle. Both require calls. Yet, as Sheriff Levitt reported, we have as of yet to locate a cell phone, so how he was making those calls to get rides, we don't quite know yet. Well, maybe he's the first telepathic escapee. Jonathan Houston was arrested December the 8th on criminal mischief charges after filming himself eating raw hog meat on a public sidewalk near Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach. A witness called 911, mistakenly reporting someone cutting up a German shepherd. Police say Houston sliced open the hog carcass and bit into its flesh while recording video for social media content. The Clewiston resident spilled animal blood on the sidewalk, creating what authorities called a potential biohazard. Fire rescue crews cleaned up the scene at a cost of $346 to the town. Houston was booked on a $2,000 bond and pleaded not guilty to the misdemeanor charge. He posted on Instagram that he was arrested for spilling a minuscule amount of blood and claimed prosecutors initially sought a $100,000 bond. Houston has 3,083 Instagram followers and regularly posts videos of himself consuming raw animal meat. You know, that's just one step removed from eating human flesh. Maybe he's seen the 1972 horror film Raw Meat one time too many.
The raw meat of the human race, who stalks those deadly shadows, whose cry echoes their horror, whose blood will flow when they strike again.
And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, a woman delivered her baby in the back seat of a Waymo autonomous taxi while traveling to University of California San Francisco Hospital. The driverless vehicle's rider support team detected unusual activity inside the car and contacted emergency services. By the time the taxi reached the hospital, the birth had already occurred. A Waymo representative said, "We're proud to be a trusted ride for moments big and small, serving riders from just seconds old to many years young. We wish the new family all the best, and we look forward to safely getting them where they're going through many of life's events." By the way, the vehicle was immediately removed from service for cleaning following the incident. At press time, there has been no reveal of the gender of the child, but what are the odds, if it's a boy, that it will be called Waymo?
Say hello to Waymo.
Well, that was an extremely long, pregnant pause. Anyway, let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff All program. Schindler's Space Architect is a documentary film that explores the life and legacy of visionary modernist architect Rudolf M. Schindler, whose innovative designs helped shape the Southern California lifestyle. The film is narrated by Meryl Streep and Udo Kier and is directed by Valentina Ganeva. Valentina joins us from California via Riverside.com. Hi, Valentina.
Hello, Peter, and thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks for being on the program with us. What led you to do this film, Schindler's Space Architect? What was it about Schindler and his architectural design that made you decide that you wanted to make a film?
This project was kind of a calling for me, you know. It felt like an opportunity to right a wrong, because Schindler is, his story is like the quintessential underdog story, you know, a bohemian, an outsider, an artist who's doesn't really play by the rules of the game, who has his own vision and pursues, you know, trying to accomplish that vision, no matter how much that costs him. So I was very inspired by his story and by his kind of drive to keep going regardless of all the obstacles and regardless that he didn't get the appreciation and understanding from his peers at the time of his life. So this was very inspiring to me.
Before you even decided to do the film, what led you to Schindler being on your radar in the first place?
I was actually approached to do a small film about a restoration of one of his properties in Pueblo Ribera in La Jolla, California. The idea was to do this short film about that restoration and then do a big film on Richard Neutra. what happened is that I start reading, the material, getting further into the stories of both of those architects. Again, I felt that if we do a small film on Schindler, just for this particular property, and a big film on Neutra, it will be, again, another injustice done to this man, because Schindler is the one that's like the innovator. He's the one that comes up with new ideas. He's the one who is ahead of the curve. Versus Neutra, who is a great architect, but he brings the ideas of Bauhaus from Europe, and he makes beautiful buildings, but he's not an innovator. Those are not his original ideas. And yet again, Schindler is not enough recognized. It's not enough understand what his architecture is not well understood. That was, again, the idea. I felt like, no, if I'm going to be involved in doing films about these architects, I want to do a big film about Schindler, where we really explain his architecture and also his contribution to modern architecture.
I understand that this film took 12 years in the making. Why so long?
Well, because in the beginning, I had an investor who basically had restored buildings by Schindler and Neutra. There were a certain amount of money that were available to start shooting. But then, that investor kind of went his own way, and I had to make a decision. Do I wrap it up the way with the material we have so far? Or do I keep going on my own and make sure that we have a film that it's complete? I decided that if I had spent that much amount of time of my life already, I was already 4 years into it, I would rather just keep going and make it right. And so I had to fundraise on my own. I had to do pretty much everything on my own except the shooting part of the film. So it took a long time. I was not just the director, producer, editor, writer, but I was also the tech support and making the website and doing the social media and fundraising and just everything that you could imagine, from buying coffee for the crew early in the morning before we start filming. And just all the stuff that had to be done, pretty much. So it took a long time.
How did you end up getting Meryl Streep and the late Udo Kier to narrate your film?
Meryl Streep, it's a great story, because once I got into her, I was just shocked that she came back with saying that she would be delighted to narrate the film. So I was like, oh my God, it's already a big thing that she agrees to narrate it, but that she's delighted was really, I was surprised how she knew about Schindler. And then it turns out that she had been exposed to his architecture through a couple of her friends that lived in Schindler houses, still live in Schindler houses. One is Susan Orlean, the writer of the book, The Orchid's Thief. And that book became a film adaptation. And Meryl played Susan in the film. So they were friends. Meryl has been to her house. Susan lived in the Roth house and the Callis house now by Schindler. She has also been at the house of Holland Taylor, the actress, who also lives in a Schindler-built house. And she had heard a lot of stories about Schindler from these women, and so she was very excited to actually be part of that conversation. Udo Kier, I still cannot believe that we lost him, because we became such a great friends, and he was just an amazing, amazing human being, in addition to being a great actor. Udo was an art collector. He lived in Palm Springs. It's a city that's very, very much aware of mid-century modern architecture, and there's a lot of people that appreciate that. And so Udo himself lived in a building that's used to be the public library built by Albert Frey, very quintessential architect for Palm Springs again. And he was really excited to be in the film because he knew about Schindler, but he was also excited to be in the film because it turns out that one of his dreams was to be in a movie with Meryl Streep. Now, they never met because we recorded, Meryl, the recording was in New York, and Udo, I recorded in Palm Springs. But their voices are in the film. So I kind of feel very touching to me that somehow in my film, his dream came true before he passed away.
Speaking of someone else who passed away, you have had several design legends pay tribute to Schindler. One of those design legends passed away just recently, Frank Gehry, at the age of 96.
Yes, yes. Frank Gehry, it was just amazing. I'm just so blessed that I managed to get this interview. And talking about why it took so long to make the film, from the time I talked to Frank Gehry and he agreed to give me the interview, to the time we actually were able to make the interview, it was like 5 years. So for many things I had to wait to happen, but I was very determined because Frank Gehry is actually, at the time, he was the only living architect who has been friend of Schindler. So Frank Gehry was a young student at USC, and Schindler went to give lectures there in the 40s. And they become friends, even though they had a big, age difference. So Frank Gehry used to go to Schindler's construction sites when he was building. He spent a lot of time in his house, and he had a lot of stories to tell. And of course, the most important thing to me was that Gehry felt that Schindler was the most important to him, as far as he can relate to, an architect that influenced him, and it was really quintessential in his development. We could trace the elements of Schindler in Gehry's work, especially what Schindler was doing in the 40s and 50s, is like repurposing materials, like different shapes, combining different roof shapes in one structure. We can see that in Gehry's own house in Santa Monica that was built in the 70s. And Schindler was doing that in the 40s and 50s when Gehry was actually around him, late 40s, early 50s. Yeah.
Your film, Schindler Space Architect, has actually done very well in the international acclaim category.
Yeah, it's been doing very well for a film that's totally independent. There is no big studio behind it. There is not even a big production company behind it. It's just me. And the LLC I created with this under the same name. But I've been very lucky to be able to get it in all these different film festivals. So it's been traveling around the world since last year, since last October. It was in Canada in 3 cities, actually. It was with the Architecture and Design Film Festival, which it was shown in Toronto and Vancouver, and then it was shown at the Architecture and Design Film Festival in Winnipeg. So we haven't made it to Montreal yet, but hopefully one day. But other than that, it was like all over the world. It went to Australia, to New Zealand, many countries in Europe. It was in France. It received an award there at FIFAC Film Festival. It was in Italy, Belgium, Norway, Riga, many countries. So it's been doing very well. And now I even managed to qualify to be eligible for future documentary feature films for the Academy Awards. So we're waiting on the short list that's coming up on 16 to see if we'll make that. Keeping our fingers crossed.
Well, congratulations on that. For the general population, besides being in film festivals, how can people see Schindler Space Architect?
Well, the film doesn't have yet distribution, except that I was approached by PBS SoCal. There is a program called Artbound. They're going to broadcast the film in May next year. So I have to prepare for them a slightly shorter version, like 5 minutes shorter. You know, they have their own specs for their programming. Other than that, it doesn't have a distribution yet. So what I'm doing is right now, it's mostly like I've been approached by cultural centers and architecture schools to do screenings and to go there in some of the occasions to do Q&A. So that's one of the ways. Hopefully, I think after the broadcast, which it will be in May, we will have in place some streaming deal as well, and then it will be available for streaming.
And is there a website that people can find out more information, like, for instance, when you decide to or get distribution for the film?
Yes, I have a website, and the name of the website is www, and then RMS, which are the initials of Schindler, Rudolf Michael Schindler, rmsdocumentary.com. And if people sign the mailing list, what I do is just anytime when there is a screening, a film festival or a screening in a certain town, I put that information and I send an email to whoever is on the mailing list so they know if there is any releases of the film. That will also be, I'll let people know through the mailing list. Also, there will be some information on the website as well if you check regularly. But probably the best thing is, to sign for the mailing list. I don't send too many emails because I don't have time for it. So just when there is a screenings and film festivals.
Excellent. Well, things come to those who wait. I mean, you took 12 years to get this film in the can, as it were, and now some people are going to have to wait just a little bit longer to get a chance to watch it. But congratulations on the film that you've made. It's called Schindler Space Architect. Valentina, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Thank you so much, Peter, and I hope we could bring the film to Montreal so your listeners can see it too there.
Valentina Ganeva, director of the documentary Schindler Space Architect. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0852, and you'll find the link to Valentina's website where you can find out when the documentary will be released in your area. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Giving you something to think about. This is Morning Shower Thoughts.
When you think about it, isn't your belly button just your old mouth?
Morning Shower Thoughts from the Stuff File program.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestufffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestufffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Hey, how would you like to become a patron of the Stuff File program? It's easy to do. By going to patreon.com and becoming a patron, you help to make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. And if you become a regular patron, as a Patreon reward, I'll share with you an electronic version of my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with two men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. You've heard me say on many occasions about the myriad of celebrities I've had the chance to talk to that are contained in my book, which is published by Bear Manor Media. You've also heard me mention that some of the celebrities in my book, and many others, can be heard on our page at patreon.com. If you've been on the fence about joining Patreon, let me try to pull you over to our side. Join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with two men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
Hello, my name is Malik. You're listening to my Uncle Peter. I'm going to keep this short because there's something called child labor laws. So I'll just say, here he is, Peter Anthony Holder.
Love you, Malik. On both of the bumpers coming back to the show, by the way, you heard my little Rugrat nephews. Which reminds me, next week, as always, just before Christmas, it's the annual Meshach and Malik Christmas special. So get your eggnog and enjoy on the next Stuff File program. And now, let's get to our last guest on this week's show. Kristina Rienzi is the author of a holiday novel that puts a chill into the season. It's a thriller called Winter Road. Kristina joins us via Riverside.com from New Jersey. Hi, Kristina.
Hi, how are you? So happy to be here.
I'm just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program with us. So everyone is in the festive holiday season, at least most people are, but you've written this book, Winter Road, which is a thriller. Are you the buzzkill in all of this, or
Totally.
do you just like thriller novels?
I love thrillers and I love Christmas. And so I decided to combine them and turn, a season that is full of cheer and happiness and love and family into something that was more of a gripping thriller with a lot of fear, obsession, and a fight for survival. I thought that was a great combination.
You know, there are a lot of Christmas movies out there, and one of the things about Christmas films is before they can be released, they have to be obviously shot, and in most cases, they're shot in any time but winter because they need to get it in production for the winter holiday. Is it the same thing with writing a Christmas story? Are you writing this in the middle of July?
It's really funny that you say that because I think about it, my stories all year long, but this particular book I wrote in the fall. So it was heading up, toward Christmas time, the Christmas season. I feel like once summer is over, I live at the Jersey Shore, so we are, at the beach a lot and by the water. There's a lot of mystery there too. But for me, right after that ends, Labor Day hits, I start thinking about the holidays. So that's typically when I like to get into the holiday season when it comes to writing.
So what is Winter Road about?
Winter Road is about a relationship gone wrong. The person that you're trying to get away from that doesn't want to leave. So there is the main character, Amelia Montgomery, is really just looking for peace after her, horrendous breakup. And instead, her ex shows up on her family's doorstep. He's unstable, he's relentless, and it's a deadly fight for survival on Christmas Eve.
Wow. Now, does this take place in New Jersey?
Yes, it does. It takes place right off the coast of New Jersey. In New Jersey, we live right along the beach, but there's a lot of woods. We have, horse farms. And so it's a little bit set west of the ocean, but in a kind of farm-like setting on a lot of property. So it's a little secluded, even though they're close to the water. So that is a backdrop for not only a family holiday where, you can have the twinkling lights and the real festive feeling of Christmas, but also where you can have a nightmare come to life and kind of be trapped in this environment.
The reason why I asked that question is notoriously, Jersey girls are known to be a certain shall we say, personality, and also their families. So I'm thinking when I read the synopsis of this book that this guy is in for a world of pain, showing up at the door this way.
Yes, and you know what I love about it, because I think you're absolutely right, and we're right by New York City, and part of the book takes place in Manhattan, where this the antagonist lives, and it's that upper class Manhattan vibe as well, and then you have the rural, semi-rural Jersey Shore area where this takes place. Family is really important. I feel like, especially at the Jersey Shore, there's a lot of locals here, people that have lived here their whole life. They take pride in where we live, and also family values, and there's a lot of farms, people who are raising horses and other animals and things like that. So I do feel like that tightness of family comes into place, because you have this semi-outsider who comes in and it tries to be a part of it all and really disrupts the entire energy of the season, and also it becomes a horror situation, terror and horror versus happiness.
What was the spark for you in creating this particular story? Where did it come from? Or was it any situation that you had either read or friends were involved in, or any kind of spark from that perspective?
It's funny you say that, because I feel like all of our stories as authors and writers come from some place of experience. And for me, the literal story came to me as I was driving down a road in New Jersey. I was driving home, and I was driving down a rural road, and it was, winter time, and the thought came into mind of, what if, what if I'm coming home for the holidays and I'm escaping a life that I didn't want, and what if that life comes for me? And I think many people, me included, have been in relationships as a younger person where one person wanted out, the other person didn't want out. And I, have had that experience of someone who didn't want to let go. And, thankfully it wasn't to this extent, but it does make you think about, what if that happened, and how could I respond to that, especially when I'm in a sacred place like home with the most sacred people, my family. And especially at the most sacred time for someone who celebrates Christmas, Christmas time. So that's kind of where those ideas merged.
If anybody read this book who knows you, would they see the protagonist in you?
I think so. I do. Because I am someone who is very determined. I do have a big heart and love for family. And I also have that independent side where I like to kind of pursue goals and, and do things that feed my passions. And, this is who that protagonist is. She went into the city, she left her hometown, she pursued this life, and it turned into what she thought she wanted. And when things didn't quite turn out the way that she thought they would, she went back home. And I think there's always that kind of coming home. And at least for me, growing up in New Jersey and living here still and being a Jersey Shore local, feeling like there's no place like home, Wizard of Oz, Dorothy, one of the best stories ever written, but it really feels that way. There's no place like home. And to allow that other life to intersect and have it go so badly, how I would react, maybe not to the extreme of Amelia Montgomery, my protagonist, but certainly I see my similarities in there on how I might handle the situation.
This time of year, you have a plethora of television movies that are holiday themed and, the rom-coms and the romance films. This Winter Road is not that, but would you like to see it turned into a film? Because it could be a very interesting one.
Yes, I'm actually working on the script right now. I've had some contacts and some conversations, and I'm working on the script for that. I feel like it's the kind of story that everyone can relate to on one level or another. It's fast-paced. There's an element of, if you follow movies and you're a movie buff, that monster in the house theme, right? You're trapped and there's somebody there who's after you, kind of a cat and mouse fight for survival. And that's the exciting part. But I think the relatable part is really home for the holidays, something goes awry. It's our worst fear. I mean, our worst fear for me would be home with my family on Christmas Eve and something terrible happens. I mean, you can't imagine that, right? But something terrible you invited in. And that's the part that I think is really resonates emotionally and would resonate emotionally on screen. I think it would be wonderful to translate to film simply because the beauty of the holiday, the lights, the snow, the family, everything we kind of feel warm and fuzzy about. And then, of course, you have this, antagonist appearing, and now everyone's on edge. And we all like that kind of safe, fearful feeling, when you're watching a thriller, like I'm safe in my home, but here's the threat, so to speak. So yes, I think it would be great for that. I also feel like, a lot of people might be able to relate to a bad relationship. We've all had them, maybe not to this extent, but many of us have had a bad relationship where we felt that we wanted out, like I said, and they did not. And how do we address that? And the stakes are raised in this story because it's not just we broke up, it's that we broke up but nobody knows. Nobody in the family is aware of that. And so now I'm showing up at home and, there is that element of not knowing. And how do we handle that? We don't want to upset anybody. We don't want to bring stress. So there's a lot going on, I think, psychologically, which, is something I like to always tap into with my background in psychology. I love to tap into the psychosis of the antagonist and the psychological weakness of the protagonist and how those colliding impact the people around them and their life, quite frankly.
There's also the fact that when it comes to the holiday period and the gathering of the family, there are, shall we say, little bits of antagonism amongst family members at a particular gathering of that type. You just said that you have a situation in your story where this person comes to your house and you didn't invite him. He's coming into your house. Does any of your protagonist family in the story blame her for bringing him here?
That's a great question because I feel like there's a lot of tension and a lot of secrets within the family, as there are in every family. And I think that there's probably an element in a couple of the characters where they recognize that she made some bad decisions and she wasn't upfront and honest with them. And I think had the protagonist been upfront and honest with the family, maybe it wouldn't have gone as far as it did in the book. And so, when we think as people, and this happens in real life too, right? You think you're protecting someone by not telling them something. You don't want to hurt their feelings, you want to upset them. But the reality is honesty is going to go a longer way in allowing that person to make a choice. What if her choice that impacted everybody wasn't the right choice? And so she kept that to herself, and that was the issue that kind of spearheaded all this. So yeah, there is a lot of tension. There are a lot of secrets. There are a lot of vulnerable parties in the family, which is all I'll say. But there's a lot going at stake for her, and the decisions she makes thinking they're the right ones actually put everybody at risk.
Have your family members read this novel? And are any of them going to be bringing it up, do you think, during the holiday period? Or for instance, during the recent Thanksgiving period that you had?
That's a great question too, because I'm sure some of them have read it. No one said anything to me, but now that I'm working on the script and that's a topic of conversation around, the holiday table, I will be asking these questions like, what did you think? Do you think you're in this story, or parts of you are in this story? Because of course, I don't create characters from direct people. I take pieces of different people in my life that I can connect with and I feel like I can exploit in a story situation, good and bad, and I create a character from those. So it's like bits and pieces of different experiences I've had, and I really I think that's what makes them so three-dimensional and real and people can relate to. But yeah, great holiday conversation on Christmas Eve, I think.
Congratulations on the book, Winter Road. And also kudos to you for having the process of getting a screenplay and hopefully getting this on either the big or small screen. So congratulations and best of the holidays to you, Kristina. Thank you very much for being on the program with us.
Thank you so much, and same to you and your listeners.
Kristina Rienzi, author of the thriller Winter Road. You can go to our website at thestufffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0852, and you'll find the link to Kristina's website, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order her book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And boys and girls, it's that time you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. The Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
In Westbury, Connecticut, 26-year-old Rodriguez de los Santos was arrested after allegedly carjacking a woman in November and then stealing the vehicle back after police recovered it. The first incident began November 23rd when a 2015 Honda Civic was reported stolen in Westbury. De los Santos allegedly followed the victim home as she exited her vehicle, pushed her, then took away her key fob and stole the car. The vehicle later was recovered by Waterbury police, but De los Santos still had the vehicle's key fob and stole the vehicle a second time on December the 10th. About an hour later, officers with the Auto Theft Task Force saw the stolen Civic at a gas station, and Rodriguez de los Santos was arrested without incident. Now, why, oh why, would you carjack a vehicle only to have it returned to its rightful owner, but a few weeks later steal that same car again? One reason, and one reason only. You're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0852. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestufffile.com. And once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number. And once again, that's 0852. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including KDXRadio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WNRHLP-FM in Newport Richey, Florida, KZZHLP-FM in Eureka, California, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. Always remember this very timely piece of advice. Good news is just life's way of keeping you off balance.